Well, my father, who was a Presbyterian minister, was in the civil rights movement, and what he was fighting for is exactly what we should be fighting for in historic Palestine, and that's called one person, one vote. Everybody has human rights. I think, as Ilan Pappé has pointed out, the hatred, the death, the genocidal violence, while it is being unleashed against the Palestinians, will consume Israel itself. Time, I can't tell. I was a reporter for a long time, and often we knew that the tinder was there, but we didn't know what would strike it. The first Intifada would be a good example. What caused the conflagration of the first Intifada was a road accident. Those are questions I can't answer. None of us know. But what's clear is that there is no hope if we don't resist. I will do my next book with the cartoonist Joe Sacco on Gaza. Joe and I spent a lot of time in Gaza, and if you don't know his books, Palestine or Footnotes in Gaza, they're magisterial works, especially Footnotes in Gaza, which he spent 6 years doing. And we said that's our role as writers, in his case, a writer and a cartoonist. We must go back. But that gets to your question. We don't actually even know what we're going to go back to, but we're going to go back. Because of course, so much of this genocide, it's not just about wholesale murder, it's about erasure. The universities, the cultural centers, and targeting the intellectual class, the writers, the poets, the academics, it's about erasure. And our job is to, the small bit that we can contribute, is to fight against that erasure. But time, I don't know.
Yes.
As you have rightly pointed out, the U.S. is complicit in genocide. Without the U.S. support, this war would end tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we all are in the awkward position of being American citizens and living here and no one listening to us. But let me ask you another question, which is, why are the Arab and Muslim states so silent? They're still engaged in diplomatic ties and economic ties with Israel, whether through the Abraham Accords or not. If they were to simply break their diplomatic ties and impose sanctions on Israel that would probably have a strong impact. Turkey, for example, President Erdogan is so loudly criticizing Netanyahu every day, but I just discovered it is one of the top 10 trading partners, both import and export, including iron and steel, including arms. So what do you make of that? You have spent a lot of time in the Muslim world, in Gaza and in the Arab countries. Do you see any hope there of a reversal? Thank you.
Well, they're corrupt, despotic regimes. The only people that, when the history of this is written, the only country in the Arab world that can be written about with any kind of honor is Yemen. Because the Yemenis know exactly what it feels like. 30,000 Yemenis starved to death under the U.S.-Saudi siege. And they had cholera epidemics in there. So they understand fully what's happening in Gaza, and they're resisting. And then, of course, how does Israel get around that blockage of those sea lanes? There's a corridor built by the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, with the trucks coming in through Jordan. These are dictatorships. Don't get me even started on Egypt with Hala. Before the genocide, it cost $350 for a travel exit visa through Hala, which is run, of course, by Sisi's sons. Now it's $5,000 for an adult and $2,500 for a child. And when they feel like it, they'll jack the price up to $10,000. So they're actually profiting off of the genocide. No, these regimes are, and they are either sustained or were imposed by Western powers and remain so. So,
Hear that?
yeah,
Western
they're
powers. Creep.
I don't see
Joe
that
Biden.
changing. I mean, if I was King Abdullah, I actually went to
Many-
school with King Abdullah. If
many
I was King
politicians
Abdullah, I'd be a
before
little worried.
were all
Of course,
involved
60% of the
for
Jordanians
years.
are Palestinian,
75
but they've had
plus
it. And if you
years.
know, they're not just chanting "We are all Hamas."
And before
they're
that,
chanting for Abdullah's brother,
You could
who's
add
under
another
house
200,
arrest,
300 years
to take
probably
over the throne.
of what they did to the Africans in order to have that area.
I mean, you remember with
cleared
food,
out
you know,
just for them.
the complicity over Suez. You
Ottoman
remember
Turks,
Mubarak? We bought Mubarak off
the Turkish,
for the first Gulf
French,
War.
the British,
I
the
just came
Germans,
from Egypt. I was
and
invited to
crooked-ass
go to
leaders from the United
Doha
States.
by Al Jazeera, and I did broadcasts on Al Jazeera English
The
and Al
world
Jazeera
must stand up
Arabic.
now.
And then I went to Rafah. I tried to go to Rafah. The Egyptian Press Syndicate was trying to organize a protest outside of Rafah because they've locked all the foreign journalists out of Gaza. And of course, the Sisi government blocked us. They stopped us. So yeah, no, these regimes are completely complicit in this genocide. I mean, Sisi is a creature of the CIA and the Mossad anyway, so.
We have another question right here.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. One quick question. As we go from city council to ask these mayors to talk, to stand for ceasefire, the comment that we get from them, the reaction we get from them is, you guys are asking us too much. Why are you putting us in this difficult situation where you're asking us to be divisive? So in the name of unity, they're saying we are not going to say anything about the ceasefire. And what's happening, the very interesting thing that's happening in these city councils is we have these rabbis that come with their whole congregations. They literally act like a mob, and they speak as Israelis. They don't identify as Americans. They say, you know, I was in the IDF, I was in Israel, this and that. And they're the ones saying, hey, you guys have been elected for local issues. Why are you talking about international issues? So it's like, what do you do with these mayors? And then they come back and they demolish us like kids. Why are you putting us in these situations? What do we do with these things?
So politics is a game of fear.
That's right.
And it's our job to make them afraid. That's the only way they respond. They're not going to respond to our good intentions. I was Ralph Nader's speechwriter, and Ralph ran because he wanted to pull 5, 10, 15 million voters, probably Democrats, into a third party to create pressure on the Democratic Party. And I'm not going to tell anyone in this room how to vote, but I would not vote for Joe Biden if you put a gun to my head. And I've had a gun to my head. So they have to pay. They have to pay for this. And I don't want Trump, but I didn't support the genocide. I didn't do this. They did it. And it won't stop if they don't pay. That's the bottom line. And we have the numbers to make them pay. And if the council members, I mean, imagine this. I mean, this is a black and white moral issue. And if these council members won't do the minimum, which is oppose genocide, then run other candidates and don't support them.
We have one last question.
First of all, I really appreciate and thank you. You have very eloquently described the whole situation. My question, or maybe your comments on that we are the 4 million Muslims living in US, and almost 1 to 1.3 are only registered. So 3 million Muslims sitting at home, not going and vote. They cast their vote. So what is your recommendation for them to really actively go registered and cast a vote for rather, depending on who they are voting for, Republican or Democrat. But the first key thing is that we have a power of 4 million votes.
Well, that was a good talk by what's going on that the world needs to step up and get into. The only way we're going to change the world and this type of behavior throughout all nations, dozens of nations, and including the global effect as a whole, is for all the people in the world to understand and hear this and stand up against this. It is time to drive this type of wickedness from the land. So I let the man that spoke, I let him speak, because we want to hear those great words from that scholar. So we need to understand and listen to everything he had to say as best as you can. Do the research. Do whatever you have to bring your mind to that rightful perspective. Now, he mentioned faith. Faith is good, but faith won't do it alone. And when you speak about faith, faith also promotes action if you're using the word faith. I don't follow much of the religion because religion will cause you to agree along with the wicked behavior because it is sometimes used as a trickery game in itself. So, let the words of this man reign within your heart, your mind, your soul, and everything that he said. And we must move to action. So this is Point Black saying, 1.